Since I was young, I had a dream to get 100 bands. So much money that it can't fit in a rubber band. I was on the bottom, now I got the upper hand.
What's good, y'all?
What's good, y'all?
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Kay.
I'm Brandon.
Equals
Crandon. Yeah.
Yes, we are here back again. So it's a little different. As you see, we did post our game play.
Marvel Rivals.
Yes, go check that out.
Something slight. Just trying to let y'all know that we just want to do different stuff on this, so which we will. So hopefully y'all like the content. Comment down below if y'all did like the Marvel Rivals gameplay, and do y'all want to see more. Season 2 is coming out, so
gonna be on that. So yeah, so we back with another reaction. This one is for all our nerds coming here. The all 27 Invincible variants explained.
Invincible.
Hell yeah.
If
yeah, go ahead.
If you have not watched Invincible, you never even heard of Invincible. All I'm gonna say is just watch the first episode. Just watch the very first episode. It's on Amazon Prime, or you can figure out other ways to watch it. But yeah, that's all I can say. Just watch the first episode.
I might have to rewatch. I think they should watch those seasons.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like this show is just so good.
For real. So yeah, go watch the first episode and come back and tell us what you think.
Yeah,
anyway,
I don't want to have spoilers just because I know a lot of y'all probably haven't even watched it, but yeah, we're gonna try our hardest not to spoil anything.
Right, but just warning, it will be spoilers if we say it. So there will be some spoilers going on. Spoiler alert, okay?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So we're gonna react to this 27 Invincible variant. So that season ended last month, right?
Last week.
Last week. So we finna watch this and we talking about turtle work. So
yeah.
Before we get into your like, comment, and subscribe.
Do that.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. We ain't got nothing else to update y'all on. So yeah. Let's see what he talking about. Yeah. Oh, also the brainstorm hoodies, he do have a new color. Just dropped. Y'all go hit him up for.
Yes, sir. Our boy Sean.
Yes, we're loyal. We go hit him up, brainstorm.
Alright. Also, just want to say, season 3 of Invincible was incredible. The last 3 episodes were Powerplex and the whole Invincible War, then Conquest. So that whole 3 episode was crazy.
Nasty word. Nasty word.
Yeah.
In the Invincible comics, there are over 20 different versions of Mark Grayson from across the multiverse, and today we're explaining each one and giving them a rating out of 5.
Okay.
These ratings will be based on costume design, strength, personality, and most importantly, aura. Okay, so in no order, the first person on this list is
Before we get into this, comment down below if you did watch Invincible Season 3. Comment down below your favorite Mark variant, Invincible variant. Mine would have to be the black and yellow suit with the cape, even though he was like a cannibal, but he just looked cool.
He a cannibal?
I guess, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, but he just looked cool to me.
Yeah, his costume is.
He looked cool.
But yeah, I don't know who's my favorite yet. I just like his costume, the black and yellow one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll see through this video, see which one I like.
From Invincible, who's one of the few Marks that wears the classic Viltrumite uniform. In chapter 104, it was revealed that in certain timelines, Omni-Man never allowed Mark to grow up on Earth, and instead raised him to take over the planet from day 1. Viltrum Mark was clearly one of those people, and this is reflected in his above-average strength compared to most other Invincibles. For example, back in his own timeline, he killed Spawn, who's a character with infinitely more potential than the people Mark usually gets beaten up by. At some point after taking over the Earth, Viltrum Mark was approached by Angstrom Levy, who, as we all know, is a villain from the main dimension. Having been pummeled half to death by the main Invincible, Angstrom wanted to get revenge by hiring variants of Mark from across the multiverse to attack the main timeline. The aim of this plan was to basically ruin Invincible's reputation by having people that look exactly like him tearing apart the world. Viltrum Invincible?
See, Angstrom, I like Angstrom as a character, but he just be doing some dumb stuff. It was like, so you go after the Mark who's actually a good guy out of all the Marks that you ran into. So like you really just trying to take down the one who's actually good, and you going like all these Invincibles. He even got the one who like killed like his own kid and like his wife. So I'm like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, he didn't. See, he get on my nerves, bro.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he get on my damn nerves, cause he trying too hard to like, I don't know. He just be doing too much. I get it, but you still do too much. Like you holding on some decade of grief, bro.
Yeah,
like, jeez, bro. Like, let that shit go. Like,
for real.
I don't know, man.
One of those recruits, and in exchange for their services, Angstrom promised to expand each of their empires into countless other dimensions. These
Right, that big headed nigga be trying too damn hard. Man.
These alternate marks were then sent to the main timeline in a battle known as the Invincible War. On the first day of this war, Viltrum Mark faced off against Spawn again, and we can assume he won this fight because by day 3 he was very much still alive and was seen hovering above the remains of Chicago. By this point, the alternate Invincibles had destroyed most major cities, including London, Tokyo, and New York, and in the process, they wiped out millions of people. That said, during the war, a bunch of alternate marks were killed by heroes from the main timeline, meaning the 8 who survived were likely the strongest of the bunch. On day 3, Angstrom arrived on Earth pretty happy with the way things had gone, and by this stage, all he wanted was to find Mark from the main timeline. Angstrom's plan was to disfigure him so that Mark would know the same pain that he felt, but this is where things began to go wrong. After so many variants had been killed, certain Marks didn't want to keep working for Angstrom, and as a result, he sent all of them to the Wasteland Dimension. This dimension is where the main Mark got stranded in Season 2, and for these variants, they were here for a very long time. It was at least months, possibly a year
I saw
or
his
two,
mouth.
but
Yeah.
That is crazy.
But he was trapped on his.
Oh,
whatever.
so he had no choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Oof.
Still,
at the
still
very
crazy,
least it was
but-
months. According to Mohawk Mark, in the beginning, things started off okay, like it was pretty peaceful, as they just talked about what happened in their lives to turn them evil. Gradually though, when the variants began to starve, it was Sinister Mark who began the process of eating each other one by one. When it comes to Viltrum Mark, he outlasted nearly everyone and made it to the final 3, but in the end he did still get eaten. Sadly, this did terrible things for his aura, and when we do the calculations, Viltrum Mark gets an overall rating of 4 out of 5. Moving on, we have Omnimark, who's one of the most confusing characters in the whole series. For a start, Omnimark has a costume clearly inspired by his dad, yet back in his own universe, he murdered Nolan for an unknown reason. My personal theory is that because these variant marks have empires back home, it's likely that killing Nolan would benefit him politically and allow him to take his dad's place. Let me know if you guys have any other theories down below, but regardless of the reason, the fact is, Omnimark did defeat his dad, which is why it's so confusing that he was then killed by regular heroes from the main timeline. To be specific, he was strangled to death with a yo-yo, and the guy controlling this yo-yo was a hero called Madman. Madman, also known as Frank Einstein, is the main character of his own comic series, and while he does have super strength, I'm honestly not even sure if he could beat most of the Guardians of the Globe. For Madman to kill Invincible, it means that this variant must be one of the weakest, and yeah, you could maybe say that the heroes wore him down together and he was just tired, but I don't care. Even a baby Viltrumite shouldn't be losing to a yo-yo. For this reason, Omnimark gets a 1 out of 5 rating and the title of Weakest Invincible. Up next, we have arguably the strongest Invincible, at least for this age, known as Sinister Mark. Full transparency, to me this variant has the #1 costume in the series. I mean, the black and yellow color scheme with the cape, everything just works perfectly. But even if his costume wasn't this good, Sinister Mark is still interesting for other reasons. To start with, in his reality, Invincible has a personal grudge against Angstrom Levy, and personally hunts him down, taunts him, and then squishes his son right in front of him. Sometime after that, he was then recruited for the Invincible War, and faces off against a hero called Duncan Roosevelt.
So why the fuck did he have him? That don't make no sense. So he killed that. Sinister Mark killed your family in front of you. So you recruit him now?
Yeah, just to take out Mark, like the current Mark. It's like, dude, yo, his motives is all messed up.
Cause he's too mad. When you're too mad, you're not gonna think straight. You're just gonna do some unnecessary shit.
Yeah, he was just convinced every Invincible was evil. And the one that he ran across that wasn't, now he's just trying to take him out. Like, I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, he's ass backwards.
But I do like Angstrom as a villain, though. He is a good villain. I can't lie. He's a good
just
villain.
Annoying.
Yeah.
dioxide, otherwise known as Fire Breather. What's interesting here is that despite Duncan being a hero, Sinister Mark mentions how in his universe, Fire Breather is a villain and one of the toughest monsters he's ever faced. In the main timeline though, he's apparently nothing special, and we can assume he lost because 2 days later, Sinister Mark was seen relaxing over one of the many destroyed cities. In terms of personality, he normally speaks like he's superior to everyone else, and was the de facto leader out of all the alternate Marks. An example of this is how when Angstrom ordered them to find Mark from the main timeline, Sinister Mark was the only one to speak up and argue that they'd already done enough. On top of that, when the variants were starving in the Wasteland dimension, he was the one who started the cannibalism, even convincing the other Marks.
I was just gonna ask that shit too. Yeah. So in that, where they were all trapped at, he ate all of them?
I don't know if he ate all of them, but he started it though.
Oh, okay.
Now, there are a couple reasons why earlier I said he was the strongest, and the first is that he single-handedly killed Viltrum Invincible. We know for a fact that he did this by himself, because at this point in time, he and Mohawk Mark were the only ones left, and Mohawk had stopped working with him. Secondly, it's clear that even Mohawk thought that Sinister Mark was the strongest, since he didn't try to fight him one-on-one, and chose to fly away rather than facing him alone. He also wasn't even sure if they could beat him in a 2v1, but luckily when the main Mark did show up, they were able to win. As he dealt the finishing blow, Mohawk describes Sinister Mark as the worst variant, but in this video he's the best because he gets a 5 out of 5 for costume, personality, strength, and an overall bonus star for his sinister presence. Yeah. Moving on to the guy that beat him to death, Mohawk Mark is the variant who we know the most about. For context, by the time he escaped the barren dimension, Angstrom Levy had sort of turned into a good guy, like he'd realized the error of his ways, and he kindly opened a portal for Mohawk to go back home. However, he was understandably still pissed off about being stranded for months, and so he forces Angstrom through the portal as well. This allowed us to get a solid look into his timeline, and also his weird personality. As an example, we find out that when Mohawk Mark was enlisted by his dad to take over the world, he actually thought Teen Team would help them do it. When Rex refused to help, Invincible killed everyone, including Atom Eve, although Robot did survive since his real body was hidden away. Following Eve's death, Mohawk said that it left a void that was hard to fill, and so nowadays he tries to fill it by surrounding himself with women who have the exact same look. Something else you might have noticed is that he sits on a golden throne, and this is because, like the other alternate Marks, Mohawk is the leader of the Viltrum Empire. In his reality, we see that Conquest, General Krieg, and other high-ranking Viltrumites all bow down to him, with the only exception being Thrag. If you want to avoid spoilers, then just skip ahead to the next alternate Mark on this list, but for those who don't mind, Thrag is the former Viltrumite leader and was only put in charge until they could find someone with royal blood. As it turns out, Mohawk Mark is that person.
I honestly don't mind the... Because I don't know nothing about Thrag.
Yeah, I don't either. Like,
and I already know in season they probably gonna do something different anyway. So.
Well, I don't know. I really don't know.
Hey, they be coming in with some surprises. I ain't gonna lie.
They do though for sure, but they really have just been going by the book for what I've been like seeing. But yeah, we haven't read the books. I've been really like I've been wanting to, but. Also, I kind of just, just been like enjoying watching it, so it's like, it's tough.
The other Viltrumites now follow him, even though his strength seems to be around the same level as Invincible from the main universe. Once he became Emperor, Mohawk was incredibly ambitious, proven by the large number of warships and by the fact that he got his scientists to do horrifying experiments on Angstrom so they could learn the source of his power. As we know, Mohawk's ultimate goal was to conquer other dimensions, but it was this ambition that led to him being killed. Without...
Yeah, Mohawk Mark is,
one of the ones.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. He was kind of like he had like a big role in the episode. So.
He did.
Too many spoilers. All we need to know is that Mark and Robot from the main timeline traveled to this reality, because they just wanted to check that Angstrom was actually dead. After interacting with Mohawk Mark, Robot started to believe that any Mark, even his Mark, might have the potential to take over Earth. For his own reasons, he just couldn't let that happen, and so he terminates Mohawk Mark and Angstrom Levy, leaving the main Invincible stranded in this foreign dimension. In terms of rating, Mohawk Mark gets a 4.5 out of 5, with his personality being the standout feature. Following him, we have two alternate Invincibles who were both killed during the Invincible War. The first one is Sleeveless Mark, who was seen in space fighting against a hero called Tech Jacket. For context, Tech Jacket is the main character of his own comic, and to explain how powerful he is, we need to know a little bit about the Geldarians. The Geldarians are an alien race who've actually appeared in Invincible before, and their technology is some of the most advanced in the universe. However, over the years, this led to the Geldarians becoming physically weak, because for generations they just used technology to do everything for them. That's why they developed these suits called Tech Jackets, which is given to every Geldarian at birth, and it increases their strength 100 times over. Now, after one of their ships crash-landed on Earth, a Geldarian soldier called Kelder passed his jacket to Zach Thompson.
Man, they need to give that suit to Immortal. Like,
No, for real.
Immortal so bad, like, dude.
He shouldn't even. His name shouldn't even be that no more.
Like,
Like, he should be way stronger. Or, like, he should be doing some crazy shit.
man, he got too comfortable. I ain't gonna lie.
Well,
he never
Kate-
dies. So, I mean,
Duplicate.
yeah, I don't know.
Like-
Immortal's a sad man. Can't
For
lie.
real, he's pathetic.
Yeah.
Humans are way stronger than Geldarians. It meant that Zach's potential in this suit was infinitely stronger than anything they'd seen before. In his fight against Invincible, Tech Jacket initially overpowered him with lasers, broke one of his goggles with a solid punch, and was just overall giving him a hard time. That being said, the Viltrumite was then joined by another Invincible with short hair, and in a 2v1, Zach had almost no chance. Both of these variants mentioned how Tech Jacket isn't a hero in their dimension, although Shorthead Mark claimed to have killed a bunch of Geldarians, which may have altered the timeline in a way that meant that Zach never got the jacket. In the battle that followed, Zach realized he wasn't strong enough to win, and so he sacrificed himself by blowing up his suit. In particular, he transferred all of the Tech Jacket's power into the battery, causing it to overload, and this explosion turned both of the Invincibles to dust. Zach himself barely survived what happened, but eventually he did make a full recovery. For this pair of Invincibles, they get a combined 2 out of 5 stars, with the most interesting thing about them being how Shorthead Mark kept speaking like a classic cartoon villain. Next up, we have Parallel Mark, who helped his dad to take over the Earth in the comics and also in Season 2. Unlike many of his evil counterparts, this version wasn't willing to kill Atom Eve, but that didn't stop him from paralyzing her. This version of Eve was one of
yeah, I
the
do
leaders of a
remember that.
resistance group, and she was the one person who he actively tried not to kill. This shows that although Parallel Mark had abandoned 99.9% of his humanity, he wasn't able to go to 100% and finish the job. In fact, he'd even arranged things so that there were people waiting to take care of Eve, because he was still planning on visiting her from time to time. Out of all the evil Invincibles, I feel like this one was meant to show us exactly how the main Mark would act if Omni-Man had successfully turned him in the first season. Following this, we have Robot Mark, who's a perfect clone of Invincible with Rudy's brain inside. To explain how this happened, we have to flash back to Mohawk Mark's dimension, where, like I said earlier, the main Invincible was stranded. With no way of getting home, the main Mark had to think of a plan, and so the first thing he did was rip out his hair and pretend to be Mohawk Mark. As the Emperor, he could basically do anything he wanted, and obviously his main priority was to create a portal back home. To accomplish this, he went to find the Rudy of this
the
timeline, and in the end they were able to make a deal. As you can imagine, Rudy was sick and tired of the Viltrum Empire, and at first he wanted Mark to stay in this dimension and force the rest of the Viltrumites to leave. From Invincible's perspective, that just would have taken way too long, and so he hired one of the Mauler twins to build a perfect clone. The idea was that Rudy's consciousness would be transferred to this clone, so that he could fix the Viltrum Empire himself while Mark goes back to their main timeline. Of course, this had to be done in secret so the Viltrumites didn't know, and so they worked from a hidden location for months. During this time, the Empire had no clue where Mark was, and he specifically told them not to look for him. However, a few weeks after he said this, Conquest, Anissa, and General Krieg all showed up anyway, believing that their Emperor was a hostage. To save Mark, the Viltrumites unleashed Monster Girl, who in this reality was now a baby from using her powers too much. Interestingly, it seems like the younger she gets, the stronger her powers become, hence why in this timeline she was 1,000 times bigger than what we've seen before. In the chaos, she destroyed Rudy's secret base, but luckily the transfer was completed at the last second. After this incident, Robot Mark took charge of the Viltrumites, with the intention of completely reforming the Empire. Sadly, once the original Mark escaped from this timeline, we don't actually hear or see anything more about it, but just my guess, knowing Robot, he'd probably use the Viltrumites to protect Earth until the Thrag situation is dealt with. Once Thrag and his people are no longer a threat, then yeah, it's probable he'll find a way to eradicate the Viltrumites, whether that's through a disease or some other idea he can come up with, but yeah, I don't think long term the Viltrumites are going to survive. The 9th Invincible on this list is one who has a mask but without any lenses, and technically he's the one variant from the war who might still be alive. On day 2 of the battle, he single-handedly beat the Guardians of the Globe, decapitating the Immortal in the process. For me, he's probably the strongest Mark that didn't make it to day 3, but like I said, there's a small chance he's still alive. The reason I say that is because instead of killing him, Darkwing forced him into the Shadowverse, which is this pocket dimension that we saw in Season 2. Invincible without lenses seemingly got trapped here forever, but it's been proven in the comic that you can survive here for a number of years. My guess is that you can probably get by killing and eating the creatures that live in this dimension, since there is pretty much nothing else you can do. Having said that, even if Invincible survived, there's only one way for him to escape, and that's if someone with access to this dimension gives him a way out. By the end of the comics, there were only 3 confirmed characters who might have this potential, and as heroes, they never give him the chance to escape, at least not on purpose. Invincible number 10 is Spider-Mark, who battled against Oliver during the Invincible War. Thanks to this variant, we know that most evil versions of Mark killed their mothers, which makes sense considering there's no chance Debbie would accept her husband and son conquering the Earth. Spider-Mark also implied that he murdered Nolan, or at the very least he tried to, which ties into my earlier theory that Omni-Man had to die in order for the Invincibles to gain their own empire. That said, Spider-Mark still clearly respects his dad, because when he was fighting against Kid Omni-Man, he told Oliver that he had to earn the symbol on his chest. Overall, his costume is one that I do genuinely like, but only for a side character. If the main Mark had this all the time, I probably wouldn't be a big fan. Invincible from the GDA is up next, and this variant was, I think, the only one to ever be captured by the government. From the conversation he had with Angstrom, we know that he teamed up with Omni-Man to take over the world, but the GDA targeted Nolan with experimental bombs. It seems like these bombs are something
Donald and Cecil?
What?
But it's like I do remember them showing that. I think it was at like the beginning of like this season or something.
I think it was, but that's
yeah, that just threw me off. You're going down.
Right, bitch.
From the conversation he had with Angstrom, we know that he teamed up with Omni-Man to take over the world, but the GDA targeted Nolan with experimental bombs.
That's crazy.
It seems like these bombs are something we don't have in the main timeline, and by using them, it did kill Omni-Man, but the trade-off is that it also destroyed most of Europe. Once his dad died, Invincible still tried to conquer what was left of the world, but the GDA tired him out and eventually caught him when he had to sleep. Since then, he's just been locked up underground, also naked, but I reckon he has a chance of escaping once the other Viltrumites learn what happened to Nolan. Flaxen Mark is Invincible number 12, and as a reminder, the Flaxens are an alien race from another dimension. In this dimension, time moves significantly faster than Earth, and as a result, characters can spend months or even years here without any time passing back home. Flaxen Mark is someone who wears the traditional Flaxen armor, and was recruited by Angstrom to be part of the Invincible War. Based on this, we can assume that he went into the Flaxen dimension like Omni-Man, but then stayed there to take over their society. Also, because of his Viltrumite genes and because of the way time works over there, it's highly likely this is the oldest Mark Grayson, because in theory, he could have ruled the Flaxen dimension for decades and still look the exact same age as the others. Unfortunately, when he came to the main timeline, he was killed off-screen by Donald Ferguson, which in terms of embarrassment, this might even be worse than what happened to Omni-Mark. On that...
They now play.
Yeah, that was when Cecil basically told him to stop. It was Donald and like those damn robots.
But no, it's time to dive into what I call the human shields, who are all the variants of Mark that basically got no screen time during the war. In many cases, and were turned into Reanimen after the war. Because we know nothing about their personalities, the rating for these Marks will be purely based on their costume and just their overall look. Mustache Mark is the first one, and straight away he gets an easy 5 out of 5 stars. The main thing I love about this is that on the usual Invincible costume, you can see that he has the eye here, and this version is like a combination of that with the classic Viltrumite uniform. In my opinion, the costume is actually slightly better than Viltrum Mark, but weirdly in the show, it seems like the design has been changed slightly in a way that is way less appealing, but sticking with the comic design, that is an easy 5 out of 5. After him comes Inmate Invincible, who was apparently locked up in Viltrumite jail for a year. In the comic, it's heavily implied that his dad is the one who locked him up, so just from that, I'm kind of assuming that in his timeline, Nolan is probably the Emperor. Invincible's costume is nothing special, it's just what you'd expect to see in a Viltrumite jail, but despite that, he is still one of the most unique looking marks just because of all the scars and the fact that he has the goggles on his face with no mask. Everything about this guy looks weird, but kind of in a good way, so I'm giving him a 4 out of 5.
He's in like an insane
Bulletproof
assault.
Mark is the 50th guy on this list, and as the name suggests, he wears the exact same outfit as Bulletproof. In Season 1, this was actually the first costume that he tried on, with art describing it as just being unsold merchandise. In Bulletproof Mark's timeline, I guess he just stuck with the design, and in the show, the colours were changed to match his blue and yellow colour scheme. This version isn't too bad, I'd probably give it a 2.5 out of 5, like average, but the comic version doesn't suit him. I feel like it suits Bulletproof well, but for him, with the orange and yellow, I don't know, I don't think it works. So for that reason, I'd give the original Bulletproof suit 1 out of 5. Also, in the comics, Bulletproof Mark was killed by the Reanimen, which, I mean, how weak do you have to be to get killed by them? I mean, every Viltrumite we've seen so far has dealt with them pretty easily, to be fair. So, yeah, Bulletproof Mark, I don't know how he became Emperor of whatever reality he's in, because he is not that guy. Next, we have Invincible with the massive goggles, who was heroically killed by Rex. This version was comfortably one of my least favorite in the comics, alongside Bullcat Mark, who also gets a 1 out of 5. However, one of the more eye-catching designs was the Invincible who had the cloth over his face, which to me gave similar vibes to, you know, when heroes like are just starting out and they make their costumes at home. It just didn't seem professional, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Anyhow, the Mark that destroyed London had a very similar costume to the main Invincible, but I'd actually say he improved it with the small alterations that he did make. This variant survived all 3 days of the war and eventually got stranded in the Barren Dimension, where he was eventually eaten and we see his bones in chapter 103. These next 2 variants also got eaten by Sinister Mark, and both of them pretty much had the same costumes as Mark from the main timeline, with the biggest difference being the lack of knee pads. During the war, this version specifically targeted Atom Eve and told her that this time he wanted to enjoy killing her slowly. Compared to the other Invincibles we've seen, who either couldn't do this or kind of regretted doing it, this one might potentially be the most sadistic. Lastly, one of the final Invincibles from the war is this Mark with slightly longer hair, who we don't really see until he gets destroyed and turned into a Reanimen. Another one from the war got torn apart by this Hulk-looking guy, and when you examine the pattern and the colours of his suit, you know, it doesn't have any black for a start, you realise that this Mark doesn't appear in any other panels. Like, he genuinely just showed up to be killed, and that was it. He never shows up before, and he doesn't show up again. Now, before we end the video, there are 3 bonus Invincibles I briefly wanted to mention, and the first is Executioner Mark, who, after taking over the Earth, gave all of these civilians a true Viltrumite execution. The next Invincible comes from a timeline where Angstrom Levy was a police officer, and he tears through 2 of Angstrom's colleagues and then decapitates the 3rd. This variant in the back of the room killed Angstrom's wife in a different timeline, and although he was never in the comics, it seems like the show has added him and tried to make him part of the Invincible War. One last thing, if you've seen the show Scavenger's Reign, there's an apocalyptic timeline in Invincible where Angstrom kind of dresses like that, in which yet another evil version of Mark and Omni-Man have taken over the world. According to the main Angstrom, there are very few dimensions in which Mark is a good person, so it's kind of crazy to think about, but the main timeline that we follow, that is almost the real alternate reality. Most of the time, Mark is evil, and so the times when he's good, that's few and far between. It almost never happens. Anyhow, if you made it this far, then check out my breakdowns for Invincible Seasons 1 and 2, it should be on screen now, and subscribe so you don't miss my explainer for Season 3. I also have another video that I'm working on that's kind of similar to this one, so thank you for watching as always, and until the next one, peace out.
Good video.
What video? Don't need to show. Oh, the battery now.
Well, comment down below if y'all want more. This type of content, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure I link down below.
Comment down what else should we react
Your new
to.
home does.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we out.
Yup.
Ride me like a lamb. She thinks she fuck with me, so she gon' try to leave a man. But she blew me in the past, so she blew her chance. I told her if she come